Hello? Oh, yes, I am. We are reconvening. Thank you very much. And we will start with item 13, which is consideration of a proposed resolution to approve the Clean Water Act Section 303D list portion of the proposed 2012 California Integrated Report. Nick, do you want to introduce
Sure.
yourself and Stacy?
Sure. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Spivey Weber and members of the board. My name is Nick Martirano. I'm the Chief of the Water Quality Assessment Unit within Division of Water Quality. To my left is Stacy Gillespie, Senior Counsel with the Office of Chief Counsel. Soon to be to her left will be Phil Crater, Assistant Deputy Director of the Division of Water Quality. And I will be presenting to you the proposed Clean Water Act Section 303D list portion of the 2012 Integrated Report. So State Water Board received 13 comments. Staff's initial responses were emailed to the pertinent LERIS lists on March 23rd, 2015. They were also made available on the program page. There was a change sheet circulated on April 6th that clarified the responses to mostly response to comment 3.5 and made a clerical fix to comment 1.0, and there's copies of that change sheet in the back of the room, and it's also on the program page. So for the 2012 California Integrated Report, it consists solely of all readily available data that was submitted for the North Coast, the Lahontan, and the Colorado River Basin Regional Water Boards. The submission deadline was August 30th, 2010, so no data submitted after that point was utilized for the assessments. So the California Integrated Report, as you know, combines the reporting requirements under Clean Water Act Sections 303D and 305B. Only the Clean Water Act Section 303D portion of the Integrated Report requires board approval. The Clean Water Act Section 305B report is included as part of the overall 2012 Integrated Report, but does not require board approval. Of course, you can direct us policy-wise on how to report for that portion of the Integrated Report. For clarification, here's how they kind of combine it. They use this category system, which is based on EPA guidance. The Integrated Report is basically all these categories combined. The 303D list portion is just Category 5, 4A, and 4B, and that's considered the statewide 303D list. The EPA further narrows it to just Category 5. So as I just said, the California Section 303D list consists of the impaired water bodies identified in Categories 4A, 4B, and 5. 4A is waters with an approved TMDL already in place to address pollutant impairments. Category 4B have some other approved regulatory program in place to address pollutant impairments. And Category 5 are waters still needing a TMDL. As I said before, US EPA considers only Category 5 to be part of the federal 303D list. So a detailed summary of all the State Water Board staff recommended changes are provided in Table 3 of the revised draft staff report. In Region 1, it was determined that 21 water bodies should have been assessed for indicator bacteria for the protection of the shell harvesting and human consumption beneficial use. State Water Board staff performed those assessments and recommended adding 5 water bodies to the 303D list, as well as changing the decision recommendation of 5 other water bodies from D-list to do not D-list. So here's a visual representation of that, those 10 water bodies. Those that are indicated with a Y in the new listings column are those that were added to the list. The other ones that are blank were those that had a recommendation change from D-list to do not D-list. So they would remain on the list. So in Region 6, State Water Board staff identified and remedied errors involving the fecal coliform listing in Buckeye Creek, as well as the nitrogen listing for Lake Tahoe. One was accidentally deleted, so we just kind of remade it and added it. In addition, Water Board staff found the assessments performed on 10 water body pollutant combinations by the regional board were not consistent with the applicable water quality control policy, and is proposing those decisions be changed. Those changes would result in 9 new 303D listings and 1 water body decision recommendation being changed from delist to do not delist. And again, here's a visual presentation of that. Those 9 water bodies that would be listed are indicated with a Y, and the 1 that's blank is just a decision recommendation change from delist to do not delist. Finally, for Region 7, it was identified by EPA that the TMDL requirement status for 21 pollutant water body combinations were incorrect, and they were changed from being addressed by an action other than a TMDL to TMDL still required. This effectively changes them from being placed into Category 4B back into Category 5. So they really didn't result in any additional 303D listings. Here's a summary of the recommended changes to the 2010 list and the total number of water body pollutant combinations identified on the proposed 2012 Clean Water Act, Section 303D list. There are a total of 92 new listings, 14 new delistings, and you can see the totals there. On the statewide list, there's roughly 3,600 water body pollutant combinations on the list, and the EPA list is roughly 3,100. So these next few slides are going to summarize the most common comments received and the staff's responses. The majority of the comments did focus on flow-based impairments and how they relate to the state's reporting requirements under Clean Water Act 303D and 305B. The revised staff report examined this issue and outlined staff's findings on pages 10 through 14 of the staff report. Staff did recommend not including flow-related impairments due to many reasons, including but not limited to the lack of a standardized methodology for determining beneficial use impairment due solely to man-made pollution. We also did outline the several other programs undertaken by the State Water Board and other state agencies related to flow impairments. So this first comment, State Water Board has a legal obligation to include flow impairments based on Clean Water Act Section 303D and EPA guidance. We found that the Clean Water Section 303D 1A does not obligate states to identify flow impairments. It instead requires states to identify waters impaired by pollutants, not pollution. And man-made flow is considered, man-made flow alteration is considered to be pollution as defined by Clean Water Act Section 502.19. This is further emphasized by the 2006 US EPA guidance, page 56, that impaired segments may be placed into integrated report category 4C when impaired solely due to pollution, like lack of flow. And as I described earlier, integrated report category 4C is not part of the 303D list. Second comment would be that the Clean Water Act Section 305B requires states to include pollutant-based impairments due to parameters like man-made flow alterations in category 4C. So again, there's the definition of pollution, and EPA guidance does state that if we do find that the failure to meet an applicable water quality standard is not caused by a pollutant, but it instead caused by other types of pollution, such as flow, the waters identified by the commenters are all currently identified as pollutant impaired, so therefore cannot be placed into category 4C according to this guidance. Third comment, that there was sufficient evidence to include several of these North Coast segments into category 5, or at the very least category 4C. The State Water Board and North Coast Water Board staff could not clearly determine this, that the beneficial uses of the segments were impaired due solely to man-made stream flow alterations. State Board staff even examined further information outside of what was submitted, including information from USGS flow gauges, Fish and Wildlife surveys, and water rights adjudications, and still could not determine impairments based on the limited guidance available to us. We did find that in many cases these segments are seasonal, with several of them going dry in the summer months, and while placement of a segment on that's impaired by altered flows due to anthropogenic causes may be appropriate under Category 4C without a consistent methodology in place to determine that kind of beneficial use impairment in place. It's really difficult for staff to come up with a consistent and transparent way in a reproducible way to show how we make that kind of determination. And to reiterate, all these waters are already on the 303D list as impaired due to flow, so they wouldn't qualify for 4C. Due to pollutants, sorry. Okay, so identifying water bodies in Category 4C as impaired due to flow will raise awareness of the issue and afford increased funding opportunities for restoration projects and will impact local planning and development decisions. So as previously stated, all the water bodies identified by the coalition are already identified on the 303D list as impaired by pollutants like temperature and sedimentation. Staff does not have any evidence that an additional 4C categorization would result in further beneficial opportunities beyond those already realized by the initial 303D listings. This is kind of another comment that kind of came out of some information in the staff report. So State Water Board should not delist the current flow-related impairments currently on the 303D list in Ventura River and Bayona Creek. So these are all in Region 4, the Los Angeles region, and are not part of the proposed item before you. Like I said before, which is just solely for Regions 1, 6, and 7. However, these listings were originally approved in 1998 and have been subsequently carried over ever since. And at the time the original listings were made, there was pre-listing policy and pre-EPA guidance. And so they are contradictory to both those, and they could be considered for removal in the future. And another comment, the resegmentation and subsequent failure to list the upper and lower Scott River as impaired by aluminum and biostimulatory substances is inappropriate. The resegmentation was based on one comment letter and resulted in one listing the new middle segment of the Scott River as impaired. I do have Region 1 staff in the audience here to provide further detail on this. However, we did investigate this, and the resegmentation that the regional board performed was consistent with listing policy, section 6.1.5, which allows for streams to be segmented according to similar hydrology and land use. The North Coast did outline their rationale for this in their staff report, and so delisting the upper and lower Scott River was consistent with the policy. Additionally, the North Coast has been encouraged by State Water Board and EPA staff to resegment their region in an effort to more accurately reflect the true extent of impairment instead of having the entire Russian River system or Klamath system impaired due to a few stations. It's better to actually identify in more detail which segments they are. All of the other 8 regional basins have a more refined and consistent way of segmenting their water bodies, so this is just an effort for them to comply with our suggestions. So that pretty much sums it up. We are recommending approval of the proposed 303D list portion of the 2012 integrated report, including those water body pollutant combinations in categories 4A, 4B, and 5. It's important to note that staff has and hopes to continue discussions with stakeholders to address low flows outside of the 303D, 305B processes. At this time, we can take any of your questions.
Yes, Steve.
Quick clarifying question, or just to in terms of the process of where State Board staff recommends additional listings or delistings, is it fair to say basically our value added is we look at the listing policy and we run those analyses sort of as a checking of the regional boards running through those analyses through the existing listing policy, and that's the bulk of the work?
That's correct. I mean, we try to, through our roundtable process, which is relatively young, to identify problems or question areas early and avoid any sort of contradictions, but at times things do happen, and we are basically QA checking for proper administration of the listing policy.
And my question is on the last point that you made about segmenting, your advice to Region 1 that they re-segment the Russian River section?
But this was specifically this is the Scott River, but
Scott River, okay.
most of their waters, if you look at the integrated or the interactive map, you'll see that Region 1 is almost all red, and that's because the entire watersheds are listed instead of individual tributaries or stream segments like many other of the regions do. So instead of listing entire watershed based on 1 or 2 stations in one specific area, it would be more appropriate to redefine those segments based on those stations to get a more accurate description of the impairment and the sources of those impairments.
And I know Region 1 is in the room. Are you planning to do that? Could someone stand up and identify yourself and comment on that?
Good afternoon. I'm Rebecca Fitzgerald, Senior Environmental Scientist at the North Coast Region. Yes, we are going through a process to try to resegment and refine the scope of our water bodies under the 303D list process. I would also like to mention, though, that there are times when having a full watershed listed as impaired is appropriate, especially, for example, with sediment, where we may have data towards the bottom of the watershed showing sediment impairment, but we know that there are sources throughout a watershed. So that's some of the rationale behind some of our historic watershed-wide listings. But yes, we do and are working towards resegmenting too, especially where you have biostimulatory response or pH or more chemical type pollutant, getting a more refined water body so that the site that you sample, the water body is reflective of the quality of that site that you sample and you get the data from.
Thank you. Okay, let's, shall I just move on to cards? Most of the cards have requested 3 minutes, so I think I will set the clock timer at 3 minutes, and I will just read off everyone that I have so far, and so that if you want to move forward so that you can step up when the person in front of you has finished, that will make it somewhat more efficient. Patrick Porgins will be first, followed by Bart Deemer, followed by Linda Sheehan, followed by David Keller, Chris Malal, Conrad Fisher, Tim Sloan, Nathaniel Kane, Susan Coram, Ben Pitterly, and Sarah Amazada.
Yes, my name is Patrick Porgans. I'm with Porgans and Associates, and today I'm representing Planetary Solutionaries. In general, I did ask for 5 minutes, and I put a lot of time into this one. And my basic concern is that I appreciate whatever the board staff is doing, to get the information we need. But we're only dealing with 3 of the 9 regions here today, and there's going to be a lag time. In getting the additional information together for the 2012. We probably won't have all the data we need to cover the 9 basins until probably 2017 or 2018. That's for the 2012 report. I did discuss that with Tom Howard to make sure we're all on the same page. My basic concerns are, first of all, I don't appreciate these workshops. I think we need to have more evidentiary hearings because we need to get into the heart of the matter here in terms of how this data is generated, how much QA and QC is going into the data in order for us to get a better understanding if we do have the knowledge we need in order to be able to discern the conditions of the water of the state. We're not there. The presentation USGS made this morning was very informative, but there was no data in relationship to whether in fact there was contamination associated with, the fracking and all the rest of that issues that were of concern today. Now, when we look back in the 2012, the 2010 report, we see that the data that came in from 2006 to 2010 showed a 170% increase in the amount of toxic listings in the state of California. Now, there's a 3-page document that I put together. I don't know if you would like a copy, but here it's 3 pages of text and 1 page of footnotes. There's 45 footnotes here to substantiate everything I'm saying. Now, when I look at the data, I realize we've been at this for a while. You know, the Clean Water Act was back in '72. You know, we were going to have no more discharge by '85. We're now in 2015, according to the Gregorian calendar. My concern here is that we don't, if I can move that down a little bit. Let me see if I can get this right. Yeah, I want to roll it down just a little bit to about third or fourth paragraph. Let's hold it right there. So anyway, we know that the data gap is not due to a lack of funding. We do get enough money to take care of this issue. And as I said on that paragraph, just near the bottom of that screen, Clean Water Act 1972. If we move down a little further, please. I'm going to have to put my glasses on here. I want to start off with California has some of the most significant rivers, lakes, and coastal waters in the country. However, 3 million acre of the lakes, bays, wetlands, and estuaries, only 1.6 million are not meeting water quality standards. 1.4 million still need pollution cleanup plans, and so forth and so on. I don't know what's going on here.
Well, your time is up, so could you just go straight to what it is you want us to do?
Okay, what I want you to do is we need to get this information in a more timely manner. You know, we've been at this for a long time, and I just don't believe you guys are doing the job. I would like to come here. You know, Tom Howard said, you know, maybe I'm not coming here complimenting you people enough. I'd be the first one to compliment you on everything you do. Believe me, I have nothing personal against
Okay, so you want us to get it in a more timely manner. Is it like a month early, or what's the, less than, rather than dividing it up into 3 different segments? Is that what you're asking
Well,
for?
what I'm saying is you're not going to be able to get it together anytime soon. You're not going to be able to do it. And I'm saying to you that you need to put more emphasis on getting the information in a more timely manner, which you're not doing. So my last point is this. I'm going to ask somebody to do an investigation of the entire board, because the water quality issue is one issue. We don't know how much water we appropriated. We're 300 million acre feet over the appropriation. We're doing emergency stuff in the Delta. It's a mess. You got a mess here. And if I can be of any help to you in any way, I will. But, you know, the board, I mean, I had good relationships with the boards over the last 4 decades, but, you know, maybe you guys are inundated. You can't do it any longer. You're just not doing the job.
How do you answer the question about getting things done in a more timely manner? Because my thought is that the way we're approaching it now is going to actually be more timely than the way we used to do it.
Right, so back in February 3rd, we presented before you a suite of amendments to the listing policy to help make the process more efficient and make it a more up-to-date picture of the water quality in the state. And we believe, I mean, it's going to take some time to implement those amendments and put them into place. Also pending OAL approval, of course, but it was with those amendments that we were trying to achieve exactly what Mr. Porgans is asking for. It is a difficult job, but we feel like if we can utilize some of the technological advances we have at our hands, that we can do it in a lot more efficient and transparent manner.
So Patrick, next time you get to come back and tell us if we did what you wanted us to do.
And that's right. And then also, I mean, you're talking about the assessment and the determination of impairment, but aren't there, with our Office of Information Management, haven't we made some progress in terms of making the data more accessible to the public in a more timely manner, so that you know, there's more transparency to the evaluations?
Sure, and as one of those amendments that was approved in February 3rd was to use the public access database, CDIN, as the main repository for all the data that we use for assessment, which is completely open to the public. And so once that is actually implemented, the Office of Information Management is revamping that to make it much more user-friendly and to be able to make that available to the public. So once that is implemented, it will be all housed in one area and is as transparent and as open as we can make it at this time.
And timely, right, in terms of the swamp data that we collect and,
Right, so Swamp would feed right into that. We'd also be connecting with the WQX, which is the federal database. We'd be pulling data from all sorts of sources into one main housing area that we hold in-house.
I compliment
Thank
the
you.
board for that, but I'm saying that you will not have the 2012 data for the entire state of California until sometime in 2017, if then. And I'm saying that's too far behind.
Thank you. Mr. Deemer, I'm sorry, I keep wanting to call you Dreamer.
I
know you asked for 15 minutes. I'm really sorry, but
well,
we
I'll-
never have
no,
15
I'll-
minutes.
I'll give a very quick summary of my presentation. If it would be all right, if I could hand in the summary for the record, and that way I
Well,
can.
we can't do it for the record because the deadline is closed, but you can give it to Ms. Townsend, and we will see it. But it won't
Thank
be
you
for
very
the
much.
record.
I'll do that. I'm Bart Deemer. I'm a individual homeowner on the stretch of the Russian River between Guerneville and Monterey, which is proposed by the North Coast Board for continued listing as impaired for indicator bacteria. And as I'm sure you know, the only basis for continued listing is exceedances in one line of evidence that the North Coast Board submitted for fecal coliform. It also submitted 8 lines of evidence based on E. coli, all of which show that our stretch of the river is not impaired and is safe for swimming. And you probably know that based on the EPA's E. coli standard, the entire main stem of the Russian River, although not the tributaries, the entire main stem of the Russian River is safe for swimming. I wanted to go through the history of the old fecal coliform hypothesis, which you may already know this. It goes back to 1951 in the state of Kentucky, when people in the Ohio River had 2.4 incidents of GI illness, and people in the town's chlorinated swimming pool had a 2.1 incidence of GI illness. And that is actually the only support for continuing to use fecal coliform as an impairment criteria. The paper presenting that result didn't present it as a statistically significant association between fecal coliform and swimmer disease, but simply as a hypothesis that there might be an association. And the National Academy of Sciences criticized this, saying there's nothing relevant here. And indeed, it wasn't until 1986 that the first epidemiological study was done to test indicator bacteria versus swimmer disease. And that study, which